Yo, what's up? Good morning, Sean G, Podcast with Soul. Welcome to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel and please share this video with somebody who you think may be interested. And also, please do me a favor and follow me on Spotify, the Podcast with Soul on Spotify. I need like 1,000 more subscribers in order to get monetized on Spotify. You could also follow me on Instagram, the Podcast with Soul. United States of America versus Sean Combs, aka Puffy or Diddy. I have been going into the city. I live in North Jersey. I have been going into the city every day, going to view the court proceedings live and in person. I have yet to get into the courtroom on the 26th floor where it's actually going down, where Puffy is at, and Mark Agnifilo and Shapiro and Garagos and all of the attorneys there. I have been in the overflow courtroom on the 24th floor. They got big LED screen TVs and you can hear and watch the court proceedings live as they take place. Today I want to talk about Dawn Rashard. Dawn Rashard was a member of Danity Kane and Diddy Dirty Money. I put up the video yesterday. She sued Puffy in a civil suit in the same district, federal district, as Puffy's criminal case, the Southern District of New York. She sued Puffy 10 months after Cassie sued Puffy in the same district, the Southern District of New York, and we know that Puffy settled with Cassie one day later for $20 million. Dawn Rashard followed that up and sued Puffy for $6.45 million. That lawsuit has not been settled. Puffy has not settled it. It's currently in negotiation. Dawn Rashard's attorneys have sent a demand letter to Puff. Puff has not paid that lawsuit. Last week, Dawn Rashard was called as a witness for the prosecution to testify against Puffy based upon her civil suit where she requested jury trial demand, where she sues 25 other people, 24 other entities. She was called to testify against Puffy for the prosecution, the government. Now, as you will recall, Dawn Rashard, after every count, she sued him on 21 counts. After every count, she always ended her claim with defendant's continuous death threats and coercion prevented plaintiff from asserting her rights within the statutorily prescribed period. So a lot of her complaints had the statute of limitation had passed, right? The statute of limitation that came and went. But she is still suing, and she always ends every count with Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented Dawn Rashard from asserting Dawn Rashard's rights within the statutorily prescribed period. Puffy should be stopped from asserting the statute of limitations as a defense due to the duress exerted upon Dawn Rashard. She wrote this about 17 times in her complaint. Now, she got on the stand and she got a beat down. Dawn Rashard got a beat down by Puffy's attorney, NICOLE Westmoreland, who works with Brian Steele, a black female attorney out of Atlanta, Georgia, graduate of the University of Georgia. I met her in the cafeteria last week, and I told her I wanted to get her on my podcast for an interview, so y'all stick around and hang out. So Dawn Rashard took the stand, and the first thing the government went to was the incident where the eggs in the skillet. There was an incident in 2009 where they were at Puffy's crib in Los Angeles. Cassie was in the kitchen cooking Puffy some eggs. Dawn Rashard was there, and the other girl, Miss Harper, was there. And this is Dawn Rashard's sworn statement in her civil complaint, right? Dawn Rashard commits perjury on the stand. This is page 12, paragraph 57. The civil case is 24-6848. All you got to do is go online and type in Dawn Rashard civil suit, and you can get your own copy. Miss Rashard observed Puffy come down the stairs looking high on drugs, enter the kitchen, approach Cassie and scream, "I've been asking you for my shit. I can't stand you. Bitch, you never do it right." Mr. Combs pushed Cassie against the wall and choked her, then picked up the scalding hot pan of eggs and threw it at her, causing her to fall to the ground in a fetal position. Cursing and screaming, Puffy dragged Cassie up the stairs. So, picked up the scalding hot pan of eggs and threw it at Cassie. This is her sworn statement in her civil suit. She gets on the stand. This is the direct examination with the prosecution. She testifies that she saw the eggs in the skillet incident and that Cassie was okay, and if we said anything, that we can go missing. She testifies, "I thought I could die. I was scared." Puffy was frequently violent with Cassie, punch, choke, slap, and drag. Puffy and Cassie. Cassie speaking up at random at different points. Harv Pierre, Capricorn Clark, D-Rock, Mia, and Bonds were all aware of this going on, and the first time she says she saw Puffy get violent with Cassie was in 2009 to 2011. Now, this is the government's play in terms of putting together the racketeering conspiracy. What they're doing is they're implying that Puffy's employees were supposed to operate and act outside of the scope of their job description of being an assistant or being security or whatever, and that whenever they saw Puffy and Cassie get into it, or Puffy hit Cassie, or Cassie hit Puffy, that they were supposed to intervene and stop whatever was doing or report it. Okay? Now, this is real important because the thing is this, that wasn't a part of their job description to get involved with Puffy's personal life or Cassie's personal life, right? Not to say Puffy was right, you know what I'm saying? Because domestic violence is not a good thing. But check this part out. Suppose the assistant or Puffy's security or Puffy's assistant or Harv Pierre, his CEO of his brands, gets involved and says, "Hey, yo, Puff, chill with that, man, or I'm going to call the police or I'm going to report you," right? And they do that. The assistant or the security does that. And nothing comes of it. The authorities are notified, but nothing happens. Or Cassie decides not to pursue the charges, which she's done throughout this case. Every time the police was called for Puffy and Cassie getting into it, or Puffy hitting Cassie, when the police would come, Cassie wouldn't give her name and she would not rat on Puff and say what he did. But suppose the assistant or people, employees of Bad Boy did that and nothing came of it. you know what would happen to them? They would be without a job. They would be fired, because that would be showing disloyalty to Puff, right? So the government is implying that they should risk their livelihood, risk their ability to take care of their families, pay their bills, right? And intervene in something personal, you know what I'm saying, and put their jobs at stake. And that's what they're saying, that these employees were co-conspirators in the RICO, right? And that's why a lot of them are being asked to testify against Puff. And a lot of them have been granted immunity and, you understand, probably threatened with being charged if they didn't cooperate. D-Rock was security. These are my notes. These are my notes that I took in court, but stay with me. We're going to get to the point. D-Rock was showing a picture. Bonds was there. Dawn Rashard says they did nothing. There were injuries to Cassie. Her face, lips, arms, and knees. In New York City, at Puffy's house, Puffy punched Cassie in the face with a closed fist. Puffy had injuries and had a swollen eye, and she wore sunglasses. Then the prosecution put up a picture of Diddy Dirty Money, Miss Harper and Miss Rashard, taking a picture with Cassie at a film festival. I think it was in Toronto, and all three of them have on shades, sunglasses. And the prosecution asked Miss Rashard, do you normally wear sunglasses? Do you and Miss Harper? She says, no. She says, well, why did you have on sunglasses in this picture? She says, oh, we wanted to show solidarity to Cassie because Cassie had to wear the sunglasses because she had a black eye. So Cassie had on glasses, we put on glasses. This is her testimony under oath. In West Hollywood, Dawn Rashard saw Puffy punch Cassie in the stomach. Harv Pierre, Capricorn Clark, Mia, D-Rock, Bonds were all present. Harv Pierre is the president of Bad Boy, and he reported to Puff. This is the incident where Puffy is meeting with Interscope Records' Jimmy Iovine to do the $50 million deal between Bad Boy and Interscope for the production and the distribution for Diddy Dirty Money. And supposedly at this function, Jimmy Iovine was there, Usher was there, Neo was there, Harv Pierre, Capricorn Clark, Dawn Rashard, Cassie, Miss Harper, and Puffy punched her in the stomach in front of everybody. Punched Cassie in the stomach in front of everybody. The prosecution asked, did any employees intervene? Dawn Rashard said no employees intervened. Dawn Rashard described another incident in the BMW Sprinter van. Puffy and Cassie were arguing. Puffy grabbed Cassie by the neck, slapped her in the mouth, and told her to shut the fuck up. D-Rock, or Bonds security, did nothing. Cassie wanted more career opportunities and she had goals. This is what Dawn Rashard is testifying to the government's direct examination. Puffy didn't like it. This is Dawn Rashard's testimony. And Puffy told Cassie, I own you. One time, Puffy, and that her career would move on Puffy's time frame and she needed to wait her turn. Dawn Rashard says, I told her she should leave. She said that Cassie looked torn and afraid to leave. Dawn Rashard testifies on the stand that Puffy told her to stay the fuck out of my relationship. You motherfuckers don't know real work. And this is on the stand, in the courtroom, this language. Harv Pierre and Puffy told Dawn Rashard, her testimony, it gets dark and lonely if you don't mind your business. Stop interfering. She says she stopped interfering. Dawn Rashard testified she saw Puff using drugs, Molly, ecstasy, weed, cocaine, ketamine. She saw him using weed at the studio and the house. She never saw him using opiates. Dawn Rashard testified that Puffy used to buy his drugs from a drug dealer by the name of One Stop. He used to buy cocaine, and he had a Louis Vuitton pouch for storage that only him and his assistant would carry. Miss Rashard testified that she smoked weed with Puff. Miss Rashard testified that she saw Puffy with a handgun in the studio around 2009 and 2010, and that he used to carry the handgun in the small of his back, and that he used to take a handgun to the clubs too. D-Rock and Bonds carried guns, and they kept them also in the lower small of the back. She says that she left Bad Boy in 2011, and that Puffy would contact her by FaceTime, and she would never answer when she would see Puffy trying to contact her. She wouldn't answer. Then she would get calls from Puffy's assistant and Puffy's management trying to get in touch with Dawn Rashard because Puffy wanted to get in touch with Dawn Rashard. And this would happen whenever Dawn Rashard's career got momentum. Then she says something, the prosecution asked her, why didn't you disclose what you saw? She says, I was told not to by Puff and Harve Pierre. And then the prosecution asked, Ms. Rashard, you filed a lawsuit, a civil suit against Puffy for $6.45 million in 2024. She says, what changed? Why did you do that? Ms. Rashard's response in court under oath on the stand was, I saw Cassie take a stand and tell the truth, and the defense objected. Judge Submaranian sustained the objection, and told the jury that they must disregard that statement from Dawn Rashard, and that statement should be struck from the record. And that Dawn Rashard then testified she filed a civil suit the same time as Cassie because of the treatment of Dawn Rashard and Cassie. And then the prosecution asked, where is the status of your lawsuit? She said, my lawsuit is pending and there's no negotiations so far. Yo, this is when Dawn Rashard got a beat down and perjures herself on the stand. This is the cross-examination by Nicole Westmoreland, black female attorney out of Atlanta, Georgia, from Atlanta, working with Brian Steele. Nicole Westmoreland comes out right from the gate, step straight to her face. Ms. Rashard, you have a civil suit against Puffy. Dawn Rashard said yes. And there has been a motion to dismiss that lawsuit from Puffy's attorneys to your attorney. She says, I'm not sure. She says, Ms. Rashard, your attorney sent Puffy's attorney a demand letter demanding money, right? She says, oh, I'm not sure. I'm not aware. The civil suit, your civil suit was filed in September of 2024, right? She says, yeah, around that time. Nicole Westmoreland, Puffy's lawyer, says, Ms. Rashard, you met with federal prosecutors before this trial, right? Dawn Rashard says, yeah, I met with federal prosecutors a few times. Nicole Westmoreland says, you met with federal prosecutors 8 times before the start of this trial. Dawn Rashard's body language that punched her in her chest her body went like, I'm watching this on the TV. Boom! Her whole body language changed. Nicole Westmoreland like snatched her heart right out of her chest. She says, Nicole Westmoreland, Puffy's lawyer, to Dawn Rashard, all your allegations against Puffy changed every time you told something about what happened. She says, let's talk about the eggs in the kitchen. You testified that Puffy attempted to hit her in the head with a frying pan. You spoke with the federal prosecutors about this, that Puffy attempted to hit her in the head with a frying pan with the eggs. You testified that Cassie was cooling her eggs. She says your civil suit, a letter was sent on your behalf to Puffy saying this exact same thing. But in your civil suit, you say Puffy picked up the scalding hot pan of eggs and threw it at her. So, Ms. Rashard, which one is it? Did he throw the skillet of eggs at Cassie, or did he attempt to hit her with the frying pan? She says, I'm not aware. Dawn Rashard starts to fumble on the stand, right? Then Dawn Rashard says, well, I'm not aware of what happened. Then she says, Nicole Westmoreland questioning Dawn Rashard, another time you met with federal prosecutors, you said you heard a pan hit the wall, but you didn't see it. You didn't see Puffy throw the frying pan at Cassie. You just heard it hit the wall. Dawn Rashard, another time you met with federal prosecutors, you told them that Puffy hit Cassie with the frying pan with the eggs in it. Dawn Rashard says, well, that was my recollection. Nicole Westmoreland tells her right on the stand in the courtroom, busts out laughing. Dawn Rashard says, well, that's my recollection of what happened. Puffy's lawyer says, well, Ms. Rashard, you have 4 different recollections of what happens with this frying pan and this eggs. Poof! Dawn Rashard is getting decimated on the stand. Everybody in the courtroom is going, oh, ooh. People are laughing. A lot of the reporters and all of us in there watching. This is 4 lies that she tells about this frying pan incident. In her civil suit, she says he picked up a scalding hot pan of eggs and threw it at her. When she meets with prosecutors, she tells them that he hit her with the frying pan. She meets with federal prosecutors another time. She says he attempted to hit her with the frying pan. She meets with prosecutors a 4th time about the incident, and she says she heard a frying pan hit the wall, but she didn't see it. She tells 4 different stories about this frying pan incident. Nicole Westmoreland. Ms. Rashard, your lawyers litigated to ask for money for the work that, your lawyers litigated to ask for money from Puffy in your civil suit. Dawn Rashard says, litigated? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Can you tell me what that means in terms that I understand, in normal person terms? Nicole Westmoreland says, your attorneys work for you, right? Dawn Rashard says, yes. Ms. Rashard, you hired your attorneys to do a job for you, right? Dawn Rashard says, yes. Ms. Rashard, you filed a civil suit against Puffy for $6.45 million to get money, and you hired lawyers to do that, right? Dawn Rashard says, yes. So your lawyers are working on your behalf for that. Dawn Rashard says, yes. She says, why are you suing Puffy in a civil suit? Dawn Rashard says, I want justice. She says, Nicole Westmoreland says, your lawyers sent a demand letter to Puffy asking for money. Dawn Rashard, I want justice. Ms. Rashard, Nicole Westmoreland, October 31st, 2024, you met with federal prosecutors again, and you told them that Puffy actually hit Cassie with the frying pan. Ms. Rashard, that's different from attempting to hit and throwing. You've given two different stories, sworn testimony in your civil suit, and you're on the stand giving a whole nother testimony. You met with federal prosecutors again, Ms. Rashard, on March 18th, 2025, and you said Puffy actually threw the eggs and set the frying pan back down. That Puffy didn't hit her with that frying pan at all. Ms. Rashard, I don't recall. That was according to my recollection. Nicole Westmoreland, Puffy's lawyer. Ms. Rashard, you've given 4 different stories, and according to your recollection, you had 4 different recollections. The courtroom bust out laughing. Dawn Rashard is on the stand at this point. Her chest is caved in, and she's sitting there, her head is to the side. She's just waiting for this to be over because she's just cold busted. She's perjured herself on the stand. She's lied of what she testified to in sworn testimony in a civil suit filed in a federal court, and she's on the stand getting obliterated. Ms. Rashard, you testified that Puffy told you that you better not say anything because people go missing. Where I'm from, people go missing. On October 31st, 2024, Ms. Rashard, when you met with federal prosecutors, you testified to the federal prosecutors that Puffy told you nobody was hurt, and you didn't tell the same story to the prosecutors of what you said about. Why didn't you tell the prosecutors that Puffy told you you better not say anything because people go missing? Dawn Rashard, that's not my recollection. Ms. Rashard, this is Nicole Westmoreland. Do you remember meeting with federal prosecutors on March 18th, 2025? She says, no, I don't remember. Nicole Westmoreland, well, let me show you this document to help refresh your memory. Please read it, and when you're done reading, look up at me so I know that you're done. Ms. Rashard, you forgot to tell prosecutors that you could die. You testified to this in your civil suit, but when you met with federal prosecutors, you forgot to tell them this. She says, were you under threat with the federal prosecutors? Was Puffy there when you met with the federal prosecutors? Were we there? Was Puffy's lawyers there? She says, no. She says, Nicole Westmoreland, you felt safe when you were with the prosecutors. You felt safe that you could tell the truth. She says, Ms. Rashard, why didn't you mention that to federal prosecutors? Dawn Rashard's response to that was, I don't know what notes prosecutors took. So here she is telling another lie, a different story from what she signed her name to in sworn testimony in her civil suit, what she said when she met with federal prosecutors before the trial, and what she's saying on the stand. NICOLE Westmoreland, Puffy's lawyer. Ms. Rashard, you met with federal prosecutors again on April 17th, 2025. I'm going to show you a document. Please look up at me when you are done. Everybody, every time NICOLE Westmoreland says this to her, people are in the courtroom are laughing at this girl, Dawn Rashard, on the stand getting dealt with. Ms. Rashard, in your third interview, when you met with federal prosecutors, did you feel safe? Ms. Rashard, yes. Was Puffy there threatening you? No. Were we there, all of Puffy's lawyers, were we there threatening you? No. Was anybody threatening you? No. You felt safe testifying or meeting with federal prosecutors? She said, yes. She says, why didn't you tell them about all of the threats that you said in your civil suit and that you said this morning under direct examination? Last week, 1 week ago, is the first time you said to federal prosecutors that people go missing. Why didn't you say that to them the first time you met with them? Also, you mentioned that you saw violent incidents with celebrities. Hold on, y'all. Hold on, y'all. Stay right there. Don't go nowhere. Hold up. I'm shooting a video. I'm going to call you right back. All right. You said that you were at a function with Bad Boy and Interscope, and you saw a violent incident where Usher, Jimmy Iovine, and Neo was there. How come none of them? Why didn't you mention that to the feds in your interview? Dawn Rashard is getting destroyed. Miss Rashard, you said you saw Puffy pull Cassie out of the car and drag her on the grass in front of everyone. She says, do you remember telling that to prosecutors? Dawn Rashard says, no. She says, read this document to let me refresh your memory and look up at me when you're done. This is not in your lawsuit. Dawn Rashard says, this was a misquote. Ms. Rashard, you met with federal prosecutors in May of 2025. 2 weeks ago, you met with federal prosecutors. And none of the things that you testified to today are in the notes that when you met with federal prosecutors. Dawn Rashard, that was a misquote. Ms. Rashard, you just testified that you saw Puffy punch Cassie in the head at a festival up in Canada. Yes. She says, Ms. Rashard, are you aware that there was a camera crew following and filming you guys all day that day, and that there is no footage of Puffy punching Cassie in the head? Dawn Rashard doesn't say anything. Why didn't Cassie testify to any of this, the other day when Cassie was on the stand. Now, Nicole Westmoreland moves on to the guns piece. Ms. Rashard, are you aware that it's common for celebrities to have bodyguards? Yes. You testified that you saw Puffy with a gun? Yes. And you were around Puffy from 2004 to 2011? Dawn Rashard says yes. Nicole Westmoreland says, tell us about when you saw Puffy with a gun. She says, I saw him with a gun at Daddy's house, the recording studio, and his house. Nicole Westmoreland. Ms. Rashard, you met with federal prosecutors 8 times, and you never said that you saw Puffy with a gun when you met with the federal prosecutors. So why are you saying that now on the stand? Another perjury by Dawn Rashard on the stand. Ms. Rashard, this is Nicole Westmoreland. Let's move on to the drugs. You said that you just smoked weed with Puff? She said yes. She says, you sure you didn't do no other drugs with Puff? She said yes. And she says that you testified, you told federal prosecutors that you pretended to do other drugs when they were offered to you. That's what you testified to today. She said yes. She says, you said you saw Puffy do cocaine. Dawn Rashard says yes. She says, let me show you a document, and when you're done reading, please look up at me. She says, when you met with federal prosecutors, you never told them that you saw Puffy doing cocaine. Today, your testimony has changed on Puffy using cocaine. She says, Nicole Westmoreland tells Dawn Rashard, as time progresses, your stories keep changing. Ms. Rashard, let's move on to One Stop, the drug dealer. You testified today that you saw One Stop sell drugs and Puffy or his assistant give One Stop money. She says, I don't remember saying that. Nicole Westmoreland, let me give you this document to read to refresh your memory, and when you're done reading, look up at me so I know that you're done. When you met with federal prosecutors, you told federal prosecutors that you never saw anyone give One Stop money for payment for drugs. Your testimony has changed again, Ms. Rashard. Man, by this time, Dawn Rashard is looking like a third grader, man, on the stand. She's just so ready for this to be over with that, you know, like her credibility is in the trash can. Miss Rashard, you left Bad Boy in 2011, correct? Yes. Miss Rashard, you were fearful for your life when you were at Bad Boy, right? Yes. When you left Bad Boy, you said you wouldn't want to come back, right? Dawn Rashard, yes. And Miss Rashard, you testified today you left because you were afraid for your life. Dawn Rashard said yes. Miss Rashard, and in all of your counts in your lawsuit, you say Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented Dawn Rashard from asserting Dawn's rights. Puffy should be stopped from asserting the statute of limitations as a defense due to the duress exerted upon Dawn Rashard. In your civil suit, you allege that Puffy gave you death threats, that he told you people could go missing, that it could get dark, that he ends people. Ms. Rashard, you also testified today that Puffy reached out to you by FaceTime. Dawn Rashard, yes. Dawn Rashard put up, Nicole Westmoreland, Puffy's attorney, puts up a text message between Dawn Rashard and Puffy. Ms. Rashard, do you see this text message on the screen? Yes. You testified earlier under direct examination that Puffy would reach out to you after you left. Yes. But Ms. Rashard, in this text message, it's showing you reaching out to Puffy, not just once, but several times. Ms. Rashard, you asked Puffy to come back to Bad Boy. You wanted to work with him again. Ms. Rashard, you asked Puffy to put the Diddy Dirty Money band back together and come back and work with Puff. You initiated these text messages, Ms. Rashard. Do you see that? And the girl is just done on the stand. Ms. Rashard, you said Puffy gave you death threats. You feared for your life. You were scared of him. He told you people could go missing. You were under constant duress. But yet, here it is on a text message after you left. You're asking him to come back. Why would you want to come back and work for somebody that was threatening your life? And yo, the girl, Dawn Rashard on the stand, she was deflated. She was done. Done. Then Nicole Westmoreland talked about Dan Diddy Kane, how they were famous and they had platinum records. Diddy Dirty Money did good. She was selling platinum records. But that when she went on her own, she says, Ms. Rashard, since you left Puffy and Bad Boy, you've released over 100 songs. How have they done? Obviously, they haven't been successful because you asked Puffy to sign you as a solo artist. He declined. You reached out to Puffy in 2020 and 2021, and you asked Puffy to come back and work with him. Ms. Rashard, you filed a civil suit against Puff in September of 2024. Why did you file that suit? Dawn Rashard says, I wanted justice. Nicole Westmoreland says, no, you wanted money. In that civil suit, you were suing for damages of $6.5 million. So she's asking Dawn Rashard on the stand why you filed this suit against Puff. And her answer is for justice, yet in her civil suit, she's asking for damages. The government comes back out, does a redirect. It is weak. They're trying to, the prosecution is trying to explain away everything that Nicole Westmoreland, Puffy's attorney, did to snatch the heart out of this girl. Then this is what she says on redirect. This is what Dawn Rashard says under redirect as to why she reached out to Puffy. The prosecution, why did you reach out to Puffy after you had left? I called Puffy to come back to help our bandmate, Miss Harper, because she was having some financial problems. So I reached out to Puffy to help her to put the band back together because Miss Harper needed money. Recross it, the government rest. This is the Recross by Nicole Westmoreland. Miss Rashard, you wanted to put the band Diddy Dirty Money back together with Puffy. Yes. Miss Rashard, don't you know that you guys would sit down and write together as a group with Puffy? Dawn Rashard, yes. You would be in the studio with Puffy? Yes. You would perform with Puffy? Yes. You would make radio appearances with Puffy? Yes. You would do TV shows with Puffy? Dawn Rashard, yes. You would tour with Puffy? Yes. Travel with Puffy? Yes. Stay at the same hotels with Puffy? Yes. Do international travel with Puffy? Yes. You would be spending a lot of time together with Puffy, Miss Rashard. Are you aware of that? Dawn Rashard says yes. And you're willing to do that even though he made death threats to you? I have no more questions. By that time, man, Dawn Rashard, like I say, she looked like a third grader. She looked so small, like she could play handball with the curb. She got a total beatdown, man. And what's important, and what I want you guys to know, is that this was a prosecution's witness. A prosecution's witness that contradicted what she wrote in sworn testimony in her civil suit. She got on the stand and gave 4 different stories and recollections about what she saw. She got busted in a total of 13 lies on the stand, which is perjury. And that should be heavily considered by the judge for a mistrial. And the prosecution should be ashamed of itself for calling a witness to the stand that gets on the stand and commits perjury in an attempt to overreach on a RICO case against Puff to send this man away for 30 years. This is the kind of prosecutorial misconduct that is being going on in the Southern District of New York by the prosecution. These are the types of witnesses that they're bringing. Dawn Rashard got a straight up beat down by Nicole Westmoreland. Peace.